All right. Thank you, Astrid. Thank you, Charles, for the kind introduction. We are a little early, so I'm going to take a bit of time. I would like to welcome you all to Performance Days, one of the most important events we have twice a year about all the upcoming innovations with regards to sustainability and textile innovation. What am I going to talk about today? So it is a deep dive. So titled The European Green Deal and its Implications for the Outdoor Sporting Goods Industry and Outdoor Sports Textiles. A little bit about myself. My name is Maite Angles. I am currently the advisor for corporate responsibility within the BSI. My background is that I hold a master's degree in sustainability management from the Eberswalde University for Sustainable Development. Those of you who know this, it is one of the two main institutions within Germany that is involved in sustainability research and education. I am part of the outdoor industry as of 2016, so 6 years by now, and I started as the Director of Sustainability at the Gearform Group. Some of you might know Gearform for their brands Nikwax and Paramo. Nikwax produce waterproofing chemicals, and Paramo is a clothing brand producing rain jackets without membranes. I was tasked here with the building of a strategic sustainability management with some main focus. One of them was chemicals management, environmental management systems, and then as well, obviously, social responsibility fell under the strategic sustainability management, and that included internal and external stakeholders down and upstream in the value chain. As of May this year, I am the advisor for corporate responsibility within the BSI. What is the BSI? The BSI, for the native Germans or the German-speaking around us, is the Bundesverband der deutschen Sportartikelindustrie. That's where the abbreviation comes from. We are an industry association for the German sporting goods, and we have only industry members, so no retail. However, it is really important for me to say that we are constantly looking to deepen the connection to retail, to open the conversation, to have these spaces where we can discuss sustainability issues with our partners in retail. We have about 150 member brands, and we have a very heterogeneous group of members. So it ranges from small to medium-sized to multinational corporations. And we cover a very wide range of segments. We have outdoor, equestrian, sport equipment, water sports, and winter sports as well. Product portfolio is 50% textiles, 25% shoes, 25% hard goods. So really, we've got it all. This is an excerpt of our BSI members. This is by no means a comprehensive list, but you might recognize some of these names. Some of them might be new to you, but just to give you an idea, a flavor of who am I representing, who are the people I talk to mainly in my daily business. What have I planned for you today? So I have two key takeaways, which are really important to me. Number one is that I would like for all of you to take away from today's keynote the structure of the upcoming EU legislation. So it's not so important to me that you understand every single detail of every single initiative and everything that's falls under the EU Green Deal, because if that was my goal, then I would be speaking for a week and we wouldn't sleep. So for me, it's important that you remember the structure so you can find the relevant information afterwards. Point number two of the key takeaways is, for me, the needed first steps. So I have included in the talk a little bit what I believe organizations and companies and brands should be doing next to meet the requirements and the avalanche of changes coming our way. Okay, so what are we going to talk about, or I am going to talk about? First of all, of course, the EU Green Deal. I'm going to introduce it. What does it do? What does it entail? Then I'm going to go to one of the main building blocks of the EU Green Deal, which is the Circular Economy Action Plan. And following that, I have handpicked 3 initiatives out of the numerous initiatives that fall within the Circular Economy Action Plan. And that is eco-design for sustainable product regulation, empowering consumers for the green transition, and substantiating green claims. And I'm going to explain why put the two in one topic, and then I'm going to come to the needed first steps, as I just said. All right, let's dive right into it. The EU Green Deal. So I wanted to start, before I say what the EU Green Deal is, I wanted to speak a little bit more about why we actually need a EU Green Deal. And I wanted to start with my favorite definition of sustainability. I don't even know who said it, but it was something that I picked up in my studies. And that is, true sustainability is about how you make money, not about how you spend it. So whether an organization is sustainable or not, a company is defined by its business model, the way it makes money. It doesn't matter whether you campaign and whether you do wonderful, nice things, building wells, building kindergartens. It doesn't matter. The way you make money determines whether you're a sustainable organization or not. And so far, we have, I say, completely and utterly failed within our economy to follow through with all of these voluntary commitments that have been done by organizations. So what the EU is now doing with the EU Green Deal, and that's why we need it, is it says we're going to tell you how to make money, what a sustainable business model is going to look like. And that's where the EU Green Deal is coming from. This is an overview, and it's simplified. And this is the structure I was talking about. This would be, for me, really important for you to remember. And those of you who are very, very knowledgeable about the EU legislation and the EU Green Deal, you can already see this is oversimplified. If I had to really put everything in there, it would look way more complex, way more complicated. But I wanted, as this is an introduction to the EU Green Deal, I wanted it to depict it in this well. So we have the European Green Deal, one of the main building blocks, the Circular Economy Action Plan. And then we have these numerous strategies, far-reaching, far-encompassing, throughout our society, our economy, into every single aspect that we have. Again, simplified version of this. If you really want to know how it's all connected, come and find me after the talk, and I'll explain a little bit more. Let's start with the EU Green Deal. What does it do? The EU Green Deal wants to make Europe the first climate-neutral continent by 2050. It was presented in 2019. It was adopted in 2020. And it wants to overcome the existential threats of climate change and environmental degradation. And it wants to do so by achieving no net emissions of greenhouse gases by 2050, reduce emissions by at least 55% by 2030 compared to 1990. And those of you who know, 2030 is also the date by which the Sustainable Development Goals need to be delivered. And 2030 is one of the first real hard goals that is set within the EU Green Deal. This is why everybody is getting very nervous at the moment, because 2030 in the regulatory space is basically tomorrow. So if you get the feeling of like, ooh, there's a lot of movement at the moment, that's where this is coming from. The EU Green Deal aims to decouple economic growth from resource use. And those of you who know a little bit about decoupling and want to have a discussion about it, come and find me after the talk as well. I've got some interesting thoughts on whether this exists or not. And then we have one aspect that is no person and no place is supposed to be left behind. Of course, this is aiming at the inequalities within the EU at the moment, and they want to ensure, the Commission wants to ensure that these inequalities are reduced and not amplified by achieving the EU Green Deal. What is also really remarkable is that for the first time in a regulatory text, we have called out existential threat. And this is also why we see this incredible dynamic within all of these initiatives, because for the first time, the wording is very, very clear. We have a very determinative word in here which says we are going to be extinct if we don't do this, which is really unusual for the EU to be this precise. So if you want, the EU Green Deal, so to say, is the vision. That's where we paint the picture of what we want Europe to look like by 2050. European Green Deal is the vision. How are we getting there? We're getting there with the Circular Economy Action Plan. If if you remember in the structure, one of the main building blocks. There are other main building blocks, but the Circular Economy Action Plan is one of them. And please remember, the Circular Economy Action Plan is not textile specific. This is still covering numerous industries. So we are not yet even with very specific to our industry. This is still applying to most industries. So what does the Circular Economy Action Plan do? It was adopted in March 2020, and it is a prerequisite to achieve the EU's 2050 climate neutrality target and to halt biodiversity loss. And you can already see here, this climate neutrality goal of 2050 is the goal of the European Green Deal, and the Circular Economy Action Plan at this high level is mentioned as one of the cornerstones to achieve that goal. Again, building up the necessary drive to change. And what does the Circular Economy Action Plan entail? It includes initiatives along the entire life cycle of products. So now we're getting closer to what this actually is, entire life cycle of products. So if we have the EU Green Deal that is the vision of where we want to be, the Circular Economy Action Plan is the how we get there. A bit more specific, what does it aim for? It wants to make sustainable products the norm within the EU. It wants to empower consumers and public buyers. And it wants to ensure less waste. And I've highlighted these three terms because you will find these terms throughout all the initiatives that fall within the Circular Economy Action Plan. What it also does, it focuses on sectors where potential for circularity is high. So we have got things like electronics, batteries and vehicles. Obviously, there's a huge plan as well on the EU Green Deal focusing on mobility, packaging, plastics and textiles, called out specifically, construction and buildings, food, water, and nutrients. So these are the sectors where the EU said, okay, these are the main sectors that we're going to focus on to achieve the Circular Economy Action Plan. I have included the official graphic of the EU Commission of the Circular Economy Action Plan. It's a bit wordy for a presentation, but I did want to include it because it is actually, in my opinion, a really good graphic about the magnitude and multitude of initiatives that fall within here. It's huge, and everything is mentioned already here at this very top-level plan. I wanted to highlight some of the words already mentioned here. If you look into the center, it says eco-design for sustainable product regulation. So at the heart, at the very core of the Circular Economy Action Plan, we have those eco-design requirements. And there are things mentioned here like performance and information requirements for greener products. They want to tackle the destruction of unsold goods. The DPP, the Digital Product Passport, is already mentioned here. So this is at the center of it all. If you go to 2 o'clock, this is the first time that we now see textiles specifically mentioned. So we've got the strategy for sustainable and circular textiles. And again, already here, at this very top-level plan, things mentioned like binding eco-design requirements for durability, repairability, and recycled fiber content. Stop microplastic pollution. They want to have accurate green claims, and I'm going to come to that in a second. And then you have at 4 o'clock, you have the new rules to empower consumers for the green transition. So the EU, the Commission, is very, very clear that consumers play a vital role in achieving the EU Green Deal. And they want to do and amplify this role by empowering consumers to make greener choices. This is where this is coming from. And that's also where the EU is focusing all its efforts to protect against greenwashing. And then, very interesting as well, you have here at 6 o'clock, global action. And this is a Circular Economy Action Plan, and it's mentioned here that corporate sustainability due diligence forms part of this. So those of you who know a little bit about the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive and the discussion that it currently evokes in Brussels, know that the reason these discussions are so big, because again, in this very top-level plan, sustainability due diligence is already mentioned. Okay. This is an overview of the EU initiatives. For those of you who are following a little bit the regulatory space of the EU, and you have the feeling, oh my God, there is so much happening. I can't follow all of these abbreviations. I am very confused. That's valid. That's a very valid feeling. That's exactly what this looks like. You see, this is not an extensive list. This is just an excerpt. And all of these initiatives fall, strictly speaking, under the EU Green Deal. Today I will talk about the 3 highlighted ones. Like I said, I have underlined 3 more that I personally find very important to monitor, which is the textile strategy and the transition pathway, which is really interesting because the Commission is trying here to really get feedback also from small and medium-sized enterprises around the needs and the structure of our industry. So there are workshops planned already now where the Commission is actively inviting stakeholders from the industry to feed back to them. I was in Brussels 2 weeks ago and we met with the Commission, and it was really interesting because they are actually really interested in what we have to say. It was a very open discussion. To be fair, sporting goods industry is always like, they always like to see us because generally we do a little bit better than other industries. But it was really interesting that the Commission is trying to understand where we are in our industry and to make good regulations that help us and not put stepping stones in our way. Another one that I've highlighted and already spoken about a little bit is the CSDDD, CSDDD. The reason I mention it here is if you are involved in any kind of sustainability team, or if you are actually involved in a design team, please keep in mind that CSDDD and the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive is something that every single sustainability manager at the moment has on the forefront of their minds. So it will take up a lot of resources dealing with these directives. So keeping in mind when you actually talk to them about eco-design requirements, these are other topics where actually somebody's knocking at a sustainability manager's doors and says, we need a solution for this. Okay, so let's dive a little deeper into eco-design for sustainable products regulation. A quick word on the difference between a regulation and a directive. For those of you who know, you can lean back. A regulation, an EU regulation, is an EU law. So that means the EU says what the member states have to do, and it says also at this point in time, this is going to come into effect across all member states within the EU. So that's an EU law, that's the regulation. A directive is something where the EU says, this is the result we want to see from you, and the result needs to be achieved by a certain point in time in the future. How the member states are getting there is up to you. What kind of national legislation you provide to achieve that result is up to the member states. So it's really interesting that eco-design for sustainable product is introduced as a regulation. That's where the EU tells us how to design our products, which is really interesting. It was published earlier this year. It's linked with the DPP Empowering Consumers Textile Strategy. And what this regulation will do is it will make products fit for climate neutral, resource efficient and circular economy. It will reduce waste, and it will ensure that the performance of frontrunners in sustainability becomes the norm. At the moment, it's planned to enter into force in 2024, and like Charles said in its introduction, we have upcoming EU votes. Yes, sorry, missing the word here, in 2024. And there's a huge appetite at the moment amongst EU politicians to get this stuff out of the door. Like, they are determined to make this happen before 2024. Because as soon as we have elections, which is the word I was just looking for, as soon as we have the elections, you can't really tell what's going to happen. And this is, again, why we see this incredible dynamic. Like, we have never seen this kind of speed and eagerness to get legislation out of the door within the EU space. Also, one word on the timelines. Because of this very dynamic environment, these timelines change rapidly. So we had a meeting with our colleagues from FESI in September, and that's where these timelines come from. Some of them have already changed again. So please always take it with a pinch of, oh, I need to double check what is the latest announcement as with regards to timelines. A bit more specific, what does Eco-Design for Sustainable Products regulation actually do? The regulation will set performance and information requirements on the following aspects. Please keep in mind, it's performance and information requirements. So the regulation wants to make products durable, reusable, upgradable, those are the Commission's words, not mine, and repairable. It wants to regulate the aspect of presence of substance that inhibits circularity, energy and resource efficiency, recycled content. It hasn't been made specific yet as to what kind of recycled content. Remanufacturing and recycling, carbon and environmental footprints, which is really interesting, and I'm going to come to that in a second. And an information requirements, including the DPP. So when we spoke to the Commission 2 weeks ago, it was made clear to us that the DPP is supposed to filter and cascade information along the value chain. So obviously the information a supplier needs is different to the information a brand needs, is different to the information a customer needs, is different to the information a collector, sorter, and recycler needs. So the Commission made clear to us that the DPP is supposed to filter the information to give the amount of relevant information to each stakeholder along the chain. They said nothing about technical implementation and how this is going to work. So I can already, if you have that question in your mind, we all have it, but they were very kind, but said we can't say yet. So Eco-Design for Sustainable Product tells us very clearly how to design our products. And now we have 2 initiatives which actually talk about, which actually focus on how we're going to talk about our products. And that is empowering consumers for the green transition and substantiating green claims. Empowering consumers for the green transition is a directive. So remember, that's not a regulation where the EU sets a law. That's a directive where the EU says this is the outcome we want to see, the result. How the member states implement it in their national legislation is up to them. It was published earlier this year. It's linked to the EU Eco-label, to substantiating green claims, to the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products regulation, to the product environmental footprint methodology. I'm going to speak about that as well, and the textile strategy. So what this will do is it will ensure that consumers are provided with information about durability and repairability. So remember first, the EU tells us to design our products durable and recyclable and repairable. And now it actually tells us, and you have to inform your customers about that fact. And this is really interesting, it is actually aimed to control general environmental claims. So say goodbye to good and green and good for the environment and climate positive, no more. And everybody who's a marketer within this audience is probably going to sit here and think, okay, now I need to change the entire communication that we have around our products. And yes, that's why this needs to be prepared for. These claims will only be allowed when based on the EU Eco-label, if possible. And voluntary sustainability labels must rely on a third-party verification or be established by public authorities. So it's a directive, like I said, and it is planned to enter into force as well in 2024. And if you think of empowering consumers, think of it as the consumer-facing side. So this is what the consumer sees. We want to be able to enable consumers to make greener choices. And this is also why I put substantiating green claims and empowering consumers together, because if this is the consumer-facing side, substantiating green claim is the counterpiece that falls within the realm of a brand itself. So substantiating green claims basically has as its aim, its initiative at the moment, because it hasn't been decided yet whether it will be a directive or a regulation. At the moment, it's planned as a directive, but there's a lot of change around this. It has as its aim, to make environmental claims reliable, comparable, and verifiable across the EU. It wants to reduce greenwashing, and it wants to make companies to substantiate claims they make about the environmental footprint of their products and services by using standard methods which are currently under development. So 2 main aspects here is the product environmental footprint methodology, the PEF, and the organization environmental footprint, the OEF. A little word around this, because obviously the PEF methodology has been under development for, I believe, 9 years, 10 years. It's a very, very difficult topic. And those of you who have ever looked into the complexity around LCAs and what they entail and how they're constructed, you know that this is a very important piece of legislation because it will actually create a level playing field across the organizations within the EU. So it is very important, and it's important that we get it done. But it's also understandable that it takes a very long time to find an agreement over the PEF methodology and what actually the final LCA, think of it as the EU LCA that tells you, okay, this is the methodology we're going to use to make all our products comparable. So it's a huge task. We have also one important or one interesting aspect seeing at the moment. Those of you who know a little bit around the French legislation with regards to eco-contribution, you might actually think, wait, France has introduced something like this. France is now asking brands to state the sustainability of their product and to verify their claims. And the reason for that is that basically because substantiating green claims took so long to develop, in the end the French said, you know what, it's not happening, we're just going to go ahead, we're just going to do our own thing. And those of you who have been talking to various people within your organizations and your brands know that nobody is happy about this. The EU isn't happy, the industry isn't happy, nobody's happy about this sort of advance of France. However, it's very understandable that at one point France said, okay, the EU is just taking too long for substantiating green claims, we're just going to do this ourselves now. I personally believe from the conversation I had in Brussels is that we're going to see this resolved soon-ish, because nobody is happy. I think substantiating green claims is going to advance now quite rapidly to basically make the French solution to this problem obsolete. But it is still an ongoing conversation, and it's a difficult situation for brands to be in if you sell into the French market. Good. So I've talked a little bit about everything from how the Green Deal is going to tell us how to design our products, how to speak about our products, how to substantiate our green claims. And now I would like to speak a little bit about the needed first steps that, as I see them at the moment, if you are a brand. I've split them up into sort of like external and external first steps. And one of the first things that I would like to again recommend is brands need to start to establish strategic sustainability management. That actually counts for retail as well. Because if you have sort of satellite bits and pieces of sustainability efforts within your organization, I applaud that. That's good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this is not good. But if you don't have a strategic approach that is actually married up to your overall company strategy, it will be very difficult to meet all of these requirements. What do you need for a strategic sustainability management? You need management buy-in. You need to get your C-levels, sit them down in a room and make them listen to this, because what you need to establish sustainability management is time and money. And I can assure you, the longer you wait, the more expensive it's going to get. And it is possible, and I want to make this very clear because that's really important to me. I believe that we can meet these challenges. I don't think it is impossible. I don't think that any of it, which is required under the EU Green Deal, is beyond anything that we can master. But you need to start planning. You need to put this into your budget. You need to put it into into the human resources hours that you calculate for your projects in the next year. So this is really important. Start planning, start the conversation now. One aspect, the last one under the internal ones, is the Olympics of sustainability management. You need to connect your product dev with your sustainability department. And the reason for that is as much as I encourage initiatives like accelerating circularity, everything that is being developed on the with regards to recycling, the aim cannot be to optimize the waste we create. The aim needs to be not to create any waste. And that you can only do when you actually involve your product designers and your product developers. And that's where these conversations need to happen, because of course sustainability people, as you saw on my resume, I don't know that much about product design and product development. So we really need to start having these conversations so we can actually design products that are designed to be circular. So that's the Olympics. I know it's difficult, but start these conversations. Get into a room and think about how you can actually make your products more durable and repairable. And then I have one last point, which is focused on sort of like more external. And it's just one point, so it looks a little lonely on this slide, but it's actually really important. And I'm not just saying this as an industry association representative. Really get involved with your industry associations. Be it the BSI, be it Katie from the EUG, it doesn't matter what kind of industry associations you have. The Commission really wants to get the feedback from the industry associations, and that's your moment to give feedback. Because what we tell Brussels and the Commission and the assistance of shadow rapporteurs and whoever we meet, what we tell them is only as good as what you tell us. So this is really important. If you actually feel, I actually have never spoken to an industry association, get going. It's the EUG, the BSI. There's various associations in various countries, but start getting involved and start how you can feed back into these workshops that are being set up by the Commission, so the regulation that comes out is actually well made and not made by people who actually had no idea about what our industry needs. Good, yeah, and just as a last word, before I come to the questions, like I said, I want to reiterate, I absolutely believe we can meet all of these challenges. It is possible, but get going now. Don't wait. It is going to get more complex, more nerve-wracking the longer you wait. And then I would like to open the floor for questions.
Can we just show our appreciation, please, for Mate?
Thank you.
More importantly, if you did not understand everything, you're like me, okay? I've listened to this area 10 or 12 times presentation. That was a very solid, very accurate presentation. Thank you. It's going to be uploaded to our website within the next 10 days. You can play it back and go through the detail. There is an awful lot in it, and urgency is the biggest takeaway.
Yes.
But we now have the opportunity from the online audience, from the people here, you can speak to the person who knows more than us. Does anyone want to tackle on the questions? Because if you don't, I start. And Mate knows I ask really hard questions. So no one's volunteering? Mate, you briefly explained since when FESI got together, some regulations have already changed.
Yes.
Which ones were those, can I ask you?
So FESI is the Federation of European Sporting Goods Industry. FESI, basically it's the European entity of all sporting goods industry associations in Europe, just as a word by. So the timelines on substantiating green claims have changed again already. I believe actually that there was talk that CSDDD, so the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, was supposed to be changing again. However, when we spoke to the assistant of a shadow rapporteur in the Parliament, they seemed quite determined to keep it. So I think actually CSDDD is not going to change, but I don't know. And I believe I actually don't know. That would be something to clarify whether the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive has changed as well, but I don't know that for sure. There was talk about it, but I haven't checked the latest.
For those people from the textile industry, our due diligence is actually remarkably good already. It's the other areas that have to conform better than us. The outdoor industry, we have good due diligence. It's not perfect. We've still got to improve it, but
It's a start.
For once,
Yeah.
we're on the right path. I'm looking around for more questions. You don't get an expert like this in and let her escape without picking her brain. Now's your opportunity. Mate's put her email address on the board. You can email her directly, but I'm going to come to two questions. Firstly, Neve. Neve had her hand up first.
I was just wondering if there's like a...
Oh, sorry, can you hold the microphone? Thank you.
I was just wondering if there was like a one-stop shop. I find it really hard to get accurate information in one place, and when I read different websites, I come away with a different take each time.
Yes, that's actually a common problem, and I can only say I feel the same way. What would be a solution to that? So you're asking basically where can you get more centered. Personally, I would always recommend Ohana, which is, so it's OHANA, which is I don't know exactly, it's kind of an agency, for lack of a better description, but Ohana, they give really great, on their blog, they give some really good overviews over the different regulations, what they entail, and when they change. So I would highly recommend to sign up to their newsletter. And then, again, I think it's actually getting involved with industry associations, because usually what we do, just like Katie does, we filter this information, we get it like this cloud of information and try to put it into more bite-sized chunks. But I can only say, yes, it is difficult, so just bear with them for a time. I think it will become clearer once some of this legislation is out and will be translated into national legislation. I think there will be a bit more clarity. And I would also recommend, that is something, really go onto mailing list of newsletters, of whatever entities are involved. For the German ones, I can obviously come and find me afterwards. I can tell you some, because there are some great webinars, seminars, all for free, where people are actually trying to explain what's happening. So, but there is unfortunately no way around actually taking part into these various webinars and sort of like puzzling it together. Yeah.
Neve, just to add a little bit extra, Ohana are really closely connected to Green Room Voice. They work in tandem on a lot of things. Yep. And we have Katie Stevens in the room. She gives the EOG sustainability newsletter. Yep. If you're not reading the EOG sustainability newsletter, you're nowhere near keeping up. That's your first one. Ohana's the next level down. And a question from Sophie.
Good morning. I need help with the PEF, because I can't follow this every day. What's the situation for textiles and shoes and other products? I mean, can you briefly give us an update?
Oh,
sorry.
I was so hoping that wasn't a question. No, that's fine. No, not really. I can't. So I know a little bit about the PEF methodology, and I spoke to somebody who was involved in developing it. I think they were actually close to having an agreement of which methodology they're going to go for. The problem is there was some internal disagreement over it, and now they've basically unpacked everything again. So, in all honesty, because I don't want to say anything wrong, I would rather actually recommend to get involved with their secretariat, with their bureau, directly and ask them for where they are at the moment. Because when I was in Brussels, it was again made clear that substantiating green claim and the PEF methodology are very much under construction at the moment. So I would, in this case, I would actually refer to their secretariat for direct information, because I don't want to say anything wrong. Any other questions?
Just to add to that information on the product environmental footprint, we've heard a lot of news about the challenge to Neurona by the Norwegian Consumer Authority. I have it on good advice that if they'd used PEF, there also would have been a challenge. So at the moment, nothing's settled, and it's coming in really quickly. I wish I could provide clarity. All I know is it's going to get murkier. Yeah. But we can take another question happily, very happily. We're going to let Mater off.
Yay.
Her email address is there. This talk will be uploaded in about 10 days' time, so you can replay it and see the detail required. But can we just show our appreciation once again for Meta?
Thank you. And like Charles said, I'm always here for questions, and I hope you have a very lovely day at Performance Days. Thank you.